So now we are going to have about 10 to 15 minutes. We might eat a little bit into our breakout time, but it's 45 minutes break. So if you are willing to stay with us for 15 minutes, now we have the possibility to open up discussions, continue asking. Okay, so if some of you had some, so I would like to use this opportunity to ask more specific questions or just open the debate and try to perhaps not ask questions, but just provide any comments, any reflection. And Jeff?
Well, Sharad, I thought your last comment, which overlapped very much with Kendra's presentation, about how to speak to policymaker, or what is our role beyond storytelling. I actually consider myself a storyteller, and I don't know how to take it through to policy. And if you, in a major NGO in India, don't know how to take it to policymakers, I have no hope. I mean, it's certainly not the first time it's been said. It's been on the agenda for a while. But how do we affect change? And you're both speaking to that. And perhaps it's just, as you said, policy papers that are written very clearly for lay people. Mm-hmm. But, academics aren't given brownie points for doing that either. I mean, it's a complicated game we play.
Would you like to take first call?
I think one thing worth pointing out is it's no mistake that I got engaged with this work and this sort of outward-facing phase of my science after fulfilling all the prerequisite career-building, moments. So I think it's dangerous to expect, junior faculty to be engaging with policymakers, or, I think you're right. We're not trained to do it. I think there could be more done there, but I think it's something that one might aspire to do as the time opens up in your career to maybe think more about turning from the classroom and the lab, and I think there's a part of the academic life cycle where this stuff fits better than other places. And I think, how do you do it? Well, you just sort of look for I love your comment about fighting for the underdog. Who's your underdog? Who do you want to fight for? And what's the policy realm that you think is going to be how you can best do that? And then find the people who are already doing it, because there's nothing new under the sun. We weren't the first people to talk about drug policy reform. You find the other people who've already been doing this for a long time, and you say, I've got some information, could you use it? And then, you work with them. It's not, it's not this like magical world of policy. There are all these people doing stuff already. So you just need to find them. I wonder if there aren't like, the land rights movement in India, or people who would love, to hear that presentation.
Yeah, so, the quick answer is that we build coalitions with activist groups, and shamelessly, in a sense, not being afraid of being seen as part of those coalitions, which academics might be, leery of otherwise. But I also have a slightly longer response, which is, I think you're absolutely right that academia is not conducive to doing this kind of work. And I think that's a problem. And it's not just lack of training. Yes, lack of training or being able to do public writing is not something we get taught when we do our PhDs. PhDs about 10,000 word papers and 50,000 word dissertations or books. So yes, we do need some training. We need training in speaking, public speaking, in making presentations that are intelligible to lay people, and so on and so forth. But I think there's, unfortunately, even after 30, 40 years of talking about the environment and saying that academics need to speak, to work on environmental problems, not to publish papers. I mean, the state didn't fund us to do environmental research so that we may publish papers. I mean, ostensibly, all the funding that we got was in order to inform change. But the ability of academia to resist any restructuring, to enable us to actually speak to change, is phenomenal, right? I mean, academia has converted every task that you give them into publishing papers. So Bill Adams pointed this out to me really nicely. He said that if you look at the emergence of environment as an issue in academia, right? In the 70s, it was the ecologists, the environmental scientists, or the conservation guys who were pushing environment. And then the social scientists said this is not a separate issue. It's part of class struggle. It's part of ethnicity or gender or something. Those are the issues. Environment cannot have a special standing. Economics actually was the first one to respond and created environmental economics. And then eventually when the other social sciences responded, they created their own subdisciplines. So you have environmental values, environmental sociology, environmental philosophy, environmental anthropology, and so on and so forth, with their own journals and their own little people who speak to each other and nobody else, right? And this is the nature of academia, to fragment and to create subdisciplines, because that's the way it thinks it works best. And we have not built institutions which will actually change the norms. I mean, it's fine to say that given this institutional structure, we can only do policy outreach after we have jumped all the hoops. But a lot of my colleague friends then tell me that then it's too late, because they have only learned how to publish papers for 20 years, and they have lost the capacity to define real-world problems and speak to real-world problems and to these audiences. So I think we need to actually ask questions about how we structure, not academia, maybe some other boundary organizations, and I consider A3 the place I work in as a boundary organization, because we have explicitly taken the position that our work must meet standards of academic rigor, but is not going to be measured only on the basis of academic publications. We have only 30% of our performance evaluation based on academic publication. The rest of it is public outreach and speaking to policymakers and public. That's the way we weigh our achievements. So we have to create structures which will reorganize the incentives and the criteria for good performance, so that we might actually encourage people to go in that direction.
Good. Thank you very much. Sharad?
Hi, I was asked to introduce myself. I'm Bill Mcconnell from Michigan State University, and have been in this kind of community for not quite as long as Oliver, but quite a while. And I'm delighted with the sort of normative turn in the community. And the other thing I'm really happy to see in GLP is the notion of co-production, which many of us struggle with. And I'm wondering if there's something there in addressing this question of stakeholders' terms. And some of us have the luxury of entering the landscape with the sort of remote sensing imagery without having to classify it first, and beginning the conversation with the stakeholders applying their own terminology and their own language to these landscapes to describe in their own perceptions. And then looking for crosswalks to the national classification schemes. And that's just sort of one aspect of co-production. So I'm just interested in hearing your perspective on the co-production turn.
So I think co-production is easy to say and very hard to do. And there are very serious barriers of class, of education, language. And when we go to the field, even if I'm an Indian, even if I speak the local language, it does not necessarily mean that people don't see me as this guy coming from Bangalore, and talking down to us, us rural folks. So a lot of barriers to cross before we can really talk about co-production, especially because in many places or contexts, there is no space for them to do something with that knowledge. When we say co-production, we are asking them to become partners in knowledge production, but they are really struggling with, what will we do with that? Because they have no rights. They have no space to organize themselves differently, or to manage the forest differently, or do some collective action around groundwater management or something. So that's a real disincentive to do co-production for them. And I think we just need to figure out whether structure comes first or agency. So on the water side, for example, I'm trying to talk more to policymakers, because you can see that for the individual farmer, it still makes complete sense to pump the hell out of his bore well and maybe quit agriculture in 5 years. And they're openly talking about that, because they know everybody, it's a competitive drilling and competitive downward spiral of groundwater, but they know they cannot control their neighbors. So just pump the hell out of it and get out. So in that context, my talking to him about groundwater sustainability or monitoring groundwater levels, it's just not. I mean, he knows. Theoretically, he knows why why it needs to be done, but there's no incentive to do it. So how do we create some incentive structures? Maybe we need to work a little at a higher level and then go back to the ground.
Kendra, would you like to follow up on this?
Yeah, I think it's hard, and I think there's always that power differential between the person on the ground doing the things we're interested in and us in academia. But there are these groups that can mediate that relationship. I mean, I think we ask a lot of ourselves if we're expected to do great science and work with local communities and champion, and do this. I do think there's a division of labor here. The activist communities I've worked with literally have said, please give us evidence, please bring us your science. We're not going to be reading PNAS and even if we did, it's unintelligible. So please, give us your insights, let us move them into the policy realms. Are we going to simplify your argument a little? Will some nuance be lost? Absolutely. But surely our arguments have got to be robust to those translations. And so I think co-production means finding people who are much better than we are and have the time to do that sort of work.
Thank you very much. So we are already getting into the break time, but I know that there are 4 people who would like to ask questions, at least 4. So what I would like to ask is brevity. So it's quick, short questions and short answers, and then we can continue over coffee. I think it was you.
Yeah, I'm Manan. I am currently based in Vienna, but I worked on forest policy in India before. My question goes out to either or both of you. My question is, how much of a role have colonial legacies played in the forest policy issues or land use policy issues that we face today? And if there has been a role, how do we overcome it?
My quick answer, big role. Hard to overcome. Colonial and imperial, U.S. imperial legacies and so on.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Well, ditto. Yeah, we have a forest department which claims a proud history of 150 years of forest protection when the country itself is only 70 years old. So.
But recognizing that and speaking to it is crucial.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Jennifer Merton. I'm a PhD student at Göttingen University, and I experiment on combining data from qualitative interviews with environmental measurements on the hydrological impacts of land use change. And I'd like to ask you, Sharad, how do you go about methodologically, in your questions that really combine social and environmental impacts? With whom do you work? Where do you have the capacity to assess hydrological impacts of afforestation, etc.?
Well, we definitely need to build multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary collaboration. So our PhD program is a starting point for many of our students to learn interdisciplinary research because it's structured to train people in interdisciplinary work. But it doesn't mean that they can do it single-handedly. So they will still have to build collaborations with people who are maybe disciplinary experts, but are willing to speak to each other, or maybe through an interdisciplinary translator like me or somebody else trained in interdisciplinary work. So it's tough at the PhD level, but again, the question is, are we training our students towards in that direction, or are we still evaluating people on single author publications? And so we come back to some of the structural issues in academia.
Hi, this is a question about kind of urban-rural divide. One of the things which has struck me from my work in Indonesia is that there's a huge urban middle class which knows absolutely nothing and cares absolutely nothing about what's going on in the countryside until it hits them in the face, like smog maybe. I think I've talked to scholars in China who say it's when urban air quality gets bad that suddenly the rural and what's going on in the countryside, whether it's to do with farming, forestry or whatever else, kind of appears on the radar. And I'm wondering if you could sort of speak to this issue of, when you say, you have to address the public, like maybe the crucial public is actually an urban middle class living, in contexts which are massive agrarian societies about which they know and care nothing at all.
I'm not going to BS this. I haven't thought about that at all. But I will now. Thank you.
So I'm just a few years older than Kendra, so maybe I started thinking about it just a few years ago. And it came to me sort of as an existential question. I keep going and working in rural areas, on forests, on agriculture, water, whatever, and the farmer is probably looking at me saying, hey, you guys, coming from Bangalore and with a car and, probably a huge carbon footprint or something, unsustainable use of groundwater in your city, what are you telling me about, water or forests? And I mean, that sense comes through even though they're not rude enough to say that. But it made me turn inward, turn towards Bangalore or towards the urban environment and say, we have to start here, or at least devote enough energies here also. And you're absolutely right. If at all there is an urban environmentalism, it's about, turning lakes into green spaces within a city and, saving the tiger out there by getting rid of those indigenous guys who are cutting down the forest or poaching the tiger. So yes, so we definitely need to communicate to these groups as much as we need to communicate to somebody else. In some contexts, these groups are very influential, and the Forest Rights Act and the petition around that definitely an example of that. So we need to talk to them. But also, I think just as setting examples of a more sustainable and fair lifestyle in cities is, I think, only the long-term solution. And that applies, I think, internationally, global north. I mean, I keep telling people, if you want to contribute to solving sustainability problems, maybe begin at home.
I'm Gretchen Walters from the University of Lausanne, and I wanted to return to the question about when in the academic cycle one can engage in policy outreach. 6 months ago, I took up a tenure track position at the University of Lausanne in development practice, and 30% of my time I am mandated to have outreach. And this is based on years of practice. And so for me, I use a lot of your methods and how to engage, and you can publish that. You can. There are journals dedicated to that. But my question to you is, what do you think the uptake of that kind of model in other universities would look like? I really love it. I know there are other universities that have it in Switzerland. It's rare, but my position would be that there should be more positions like ours that actually evaluate us against that and force us to make our land use research relevant to stakeholders.
That sounds like a great model. I'd love to learn more about it and how you negotiate sort of straddling two worlds, and if that introduces kind of more work for you overall, and how you deal with that, and are you supported, and so on. Fascinating. Love to know more.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I have a few questions, but I know people are dying for some coffee and tea. So thank you very much. So Sharad and Kendra.